The engineering professional mocked the African-American technician with laughter. "Should you successfully repair that motor, I'll become your wife," she declared. This harsh mockery reverberated throughout the corporate storage facility, like a gunshot piercing the strained quiet of that Monday dawn. Rebecca Williams, head engineer at Precision Automotive located in Detroit, aimed a mobile device straight at David Jackson while she reiterated the statement with a malicious grin that failed to reach her gaze. "Every moment is being documented. David, once you fail spectacularly, I want the entire company to witness what occurs when someone attempts to replace you." David had reached 38 years of age and possessed more experience working beneath vehicle engines than Rebecca had accumulated studying at costly educational institutions. His rough hands carried tales of motors rescued when all other technicians had surrendered hope. His modest garage on the city's southern edge lacked cutting-edge tools or credentials displayed on walls. However, it possessed something the Precision Engineering Division could never purchase: authentic mechanical brilliance. The experimental motor resting on the steel work surface had endured 3 weeks of technical examination. 5 degree-holding engineers had pronounced the project deceased following disastrous breakdown that drained the corporation of $200,000. This represented a groundbreaking prototype for electric vehicles featuring exclusive technology that guaranteed to extend driving distance by 60%. "You possess until Friday," Rebecca declared to the small gathering of workers who had assembled to observe the show. 5 days to accomplish what our specialist team failed to achieve in 3 weeks. Once you fail, I want everyone to comprehend why certain individuals must acknowledge their restrictions. The remark had emerged during a heated conference regarding production delays. Someone had casually suggested that even David from the neighborhood repair facility could resolve this more quickly than their division. Rebecca had erupted, her face flushed with rage beneath a professional facade. Summon this miraculous technician. Then, she had mocked in a sharp tone, "Should he manage to repair what 5 trained experts couldn't, I'll personally present him with a $200,000 annual salary." This was a vicious snare, and everyone recognized it. David lacked a university education. He possessed no access to exclusive technical documentation, and he certainly didn't own the computerized assessment tools that exceeded most people's home values. "Simply observe him," Jake, Rebecca's aide, murmured to his peers. "He likely never completed secondary education, yet he desires to compete with genuine engineers." David gave no indication of hearing the remark, but his deep eyes remained focused on the intricate engine with an intensity that caused some observers to shift nervously. This was a quiet focus of someone who had confronted impossible obstacles previously and mastered reading secrets that others didn't even realize existed. "Pitiful," Rebecca whispered loudly enough to be overheard, recording every moment of the planned degradation. "He lacks knowledge of where to begin." Yet while everyone else silently ridiculed him, something in David's expression suggested a threatening tranquility that didn't align with the seemingly hopeless circumstances. This was a composure of someone who possesses information capable of rewriting the complete narrative of dominance. Standing there, before all the scornful gazes and cameras directed at him, he remained steadfast like someone who understands the genuine significance of the words he had just heard and the cost some would bear for their pride. Should you be enjoying this tale of fairness and retribution, remember to follow the channel to discover how a moment of shame became the greatest error Rebecca Williams ever committed in her existence. The recording of Rebecca's provocation circulated through the company's social platforms like wildfire. Within 24 hours, the footage had been distributed across dozens of internal forums, accompanied by harsh laughter and toxic remarks, analyzing every moment of public degradation. Someone ought to inform David that matrimony excludes healthcare coverage, posted Mike from the sales division, followed by numerous crying emoticons. Picture his expression when he discovers he cannot even repair a toaster. David learned about the widespread video when his teenage daughter Jasmine returned from school with tear-stained eyes. "Father, my classmates are circulating a video of you on TikTok. They're expressing terrible things." Seated in the compact living space of the residence he had shared with his daughter since his spouse perished in an automobile accident 5 years prior, David experienced a familiar surge of controlled fury rising in his chest. This was identical to the emotion he had learned to manage when physicians at the public medical facility informed him nothing more could be done for Linda, that perhaps circumstances would differ at a private clinic. "Don't heed those individuals, Princess," David whispered, embracing his daughter. Some individuals only feel significant by diminishing others. However, internally something was being carefully recorded and stored in a shadowy corner of his consciousness. Every face that had laughed, every harsh comment, every person who had filmed his humiliation for complimentary entertainment. At Precision Automotive, Rebecca was relishing every instant of her anticipated triumph. During Monday's morning conference, she displayed the video on the meeting room screen, generating widespread amusement from the management. "Observe the expression of confidence on his face," Rebecca sneered, freezing the video at the precise moment David silently agreed to accept the challenge. It's almost endearing how some individuals simply cannot recognize their own restrictions. The corporation's chief executive, Thomas Crawford, a 60-year-old individual who had constructed his automotive empire through decades of dedication, observed the scene with an increasingly uncomfortable demeanor. "Rebecca, don't you believe this has exceeded acceptable limits?" The individual isn't even present to defend himself. "That's precisely why it's instructional," Rebecca responded with a sharp smile. "How frequently will we squander time and resources on individuals who are clearly unqualified to be here? This serves as a lesson for all of us regarding maintaining proper standards." Jake, the sycophantic aide, sees the opportunity to attack. "My relative is a mechanical engineer with credentials from MIT, and he states that this motor type is virtually impossible to repair without specialized tools. David probably cannot even interpret the technical blueprints." What none of them realized was that David had spent the previous 3 days absorbed in something that extended far beyond technical blueprints. In his small garage, surrounded by technical guides borrowed from the public library and patent documents he had downloaded free from the internet, he was uncovering something that would cause all that laughter to lodge in their throats. The motor wasn't merely damaged. It had been intentionally sabotaged. The damage was subtle, nearly invisible to anyone without decades of hands-on experience. However, David had learned to interpret signs that office engineers would never detect. 3 small parts had been deliberately harmed to mimic natural breakdown, but the sequence was too precise to be coincidental. Someone at Precision Automotive had sabotaged the company's own prototype. "Fascinating," David muttered to himself, carefully photographing each piece of proof with his aged mobile phone. "Extremely fascinating." On Tuesday, Rebecca decided to escalate her humiliation strategy. She established a WhatsApp group titled Miracle Mechanic Updates and included all company workers, sharing sarcastic progress reports about David's advancement. "Day 2, our champion is probably still attempting to locate the power button," she posted, followed by dozens of laughing and approving responses from her colleagues. "I wager he surrendered and is at the tavern," added Carlos from bookkeeping. "Or perhaps he realized this isn't the environment for individuals like him," commented Sandra from personnel. However, while the entire corporation was entertaining themselves at his expense, David was conducting a very intriguing conversation with Samuel Torres, a 70-year-old veteran technician who had worked at Precision for 40 years before retiring. "That type of sabotage bears the signature of someone with inside access," Samuel stated, examining the photographs David had captured of the engine. "I recognize that sequence. I witnessed it previously about 15 years ago when someone was attempting to derail specific projects to benefit other contracts." David nodded slowly. "You know individuals who still work there?" Samuel smiled, his eyes twinkling with friendly mischief. "Son, I know individuals in positions you wouldn't believe, and some of those individuals are very interested in learning why prototypes are being sabotaged." On Wednesday, Rebecca was so certain of a victory that she committed what would prove to be the greatest error of her career. She contacted a local radio program and related the entire story live, describing David as some technician who believes he can compete with genuine professionals. "It's a matter of appropriate education," she explained to listeners. "Some individuals simply need to learn to accept their natural restrictions." What Rebecca didn't realize was that one of the program's most attentive listeners was Dr. Angela Morrison, a mechanical engineer and professor at the University of Detroit and a consultant specializing in industrial sabotage. Angela had worked on similar cases previously, and something in the description of the irreparable engine had triggered alarm signals in her experienced mind. That same afternoon, Angela appeared at David's garage with an unexpected proposition. "Mr. Jackson, my name is Angela Morrison. I heard about your situation on the radio, and I'd genuinely like to examine that impossible engine." David observed her carefully. Angela was an African-American woman in her 50s with a confident bearing of someone who had struggled to earn respect in predominantly male and white environments. University professor. David inquired among other things. Angela smiled. However, today I'm here as someone who recognizes sabotage when she observes it. David slowly opened the door to his garage, finally permitting someone to see what he had discovered, while Rebecca continued her humiliation campaign on social media, posting cruel memes and accumulating likes from equally prejudiced colleagues. Something was crystallizing in the focused silence of David's garage. Every recorded laugh, every poisonous comment, every moment of public contempt was being carefully archived, not only in his memory, but now in concrete evidence that would soon reveal exactly who was truly out of place in this narrative. Dr. Angela Morrison wasn't merely a university professor. For 20 years, she had served as a technical expert for the FBI on cases of industrial sabotage. What she observed in David's garage confirmed her darkest suspicions. "This isn't simply sabotage," Angela murmured, examining the detailed photographs David had taken. "It's a specific sequence I've encountered before. Someone at Precision is selling prototypes to competitors and sabotaging the originals to conceal the theft." Samuel Torres nodded grimly. "I've suspected something like this for the final few years I was with the company. Projects that failed too strangely to be coincidental." Meanwhile, Rebecca intensified her humiliation campaign with dangerous confidence. She had created a public Facebook event called Wedding of the Century Engineer Mechanic for Friday, inviting all company employees to witness the historic moment. "I've even selected the dress," she posted on her stories, filming herself laughing hysterically. "Something very simple because it's going to be a brief ceremony, like 5 seconds of 'I told you this wouldn't work' and that's it." The comments were cruel and plentiful. "Poor guy, he has no idea what's approaching," wrote Jake. "Someone should warn him that he can withdraw now and preserve some dignity." David watched silently, capturing screenshots of every post, every comment, every moment of documented cruelty. His daughter, Jasmine, who had learned to use video editing software at school, was assisting him in organizing all the digital evidence. "Dad, look at this," Jasmine said, showing him her phone. "She made a video imitating you at work. It already has 15,000 views." In the video, Rebecca had staged a cruel parody, pretending to be a confused mechanic trying to understand a complex engine using an exaggerated voice and exaggerated gestures that clearly satirized racial stereotypes. "Perfect," David muttered, saving the video. Continued documenting everything. On Thursday, Angela returned with information that completely changed the game. "David, I need to show you something. I obtained access to Precision's maintenance records for the last 5 years through a contact in the insurance department. The documents revealed a systematic pattern. 8 prototypes had failed in a similar manner over the past 3 years, always following the same method of sabotage that David had identified. More importantly, all of the failures had occurred on projects led by African-American engineers or women. "This isn't just about technology," Angela explained. "It's about keeping certain people out of leadership positions. When projects fail, these engineers get demoted or fired." Samuel connected the dots. "And guess who always took over the projects after failures? The same group of white engineers who are now laughing at you." David spent that night working on the engine with surgical precision. He wasn't just fixing it. He was meticulously documenting every piece of evidence of sabotage, creating a technical report that would be impossible to refute. "Dad," said Jasmine, entering the garage with a cup of coffee, "are you certain you want to do this? These people are very powerful." David stopped working and looked at his daughter. "You know what your mother always said? That the difference between justice and revenge is that justice protects other people from going through what you went through." On Friday morning, Rebecca arrived at the company wearing a bright red blazer and carrying a small professional camera. She had hired a freelance videographer to document the historic moment in high quality. "Guys, in 2 hours, we're going to have some real viral content," she announced to her colleagues. "The kind of video that teaches lessons about knowing your limits." Jake was ecstatic. "I've already set up the WhatsApp group to share it in real time. This will be a meme in minutes." What none of them knew was that David had already arrived. Angela was parked discreetly across the street from the company with professional recording equipment borrowed from a university. Samuel was positioned at the entrance filming with his cell phone. And David? David stood calmly next to the repaired engine with an almost imperceptible smile, holding a thick envelope that contained much more than anyone at Precision could imagine. Because sometimes, when powerful people completely underestimate those they consider inferior, they forget that true intelligence doesn't need a diploma to rewrite all the rules of the game. At 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon, the Precision Automotive warehouse was crowded like never before. Rebecca had gotten what she wanted, an audience of over 100 employees, executives, and even some important customers she had invited to witness an educational moment about professional standards. The hired cameraman was already in position, broadcasting live on the company's social media channels. Rebecca wore a bright red blazer and held a bouquet of plastic flowers she had bought specifically for the charade. Everyone, in a few minutes you're going to witness a valuable lesson about the importance of knowing your limitations, she announced to the camera, smiling with a cruelty that made some employees shift uncomfortably. David Jackson promised to fix an engine that 5 engineers said was impossible to fix. Let's see how that ends. David entered the warehouse carrying a toolbox and walking with a calmness that contrasted dramatically with Rebecca's frenetic energy. Behind him, Angela Morrison entered discreetly, filming everything with professional equipment from the university. "Ah, our groom has arrived," Jake shouted, eliciting cruel laughter from the crowd. "Where's the suit? You can't marry the engineer in dirty overalls." David positioned himself next to the engine he had spent the last 5 days repairing. With precise movements, he connected the last cables and checked the oil levels. The silence in the warehouse was tense, broken only by the muffled laughter of a few employees. "Before we begin," David said, his clear, firm voice echoing through the warehouse, "I'd like everyone to see something interesting I discovered during the repair." Rebecca frowned. This wasn't in the humiliation script she had planned. David held up his old cell phone, connecting it to a portable projector Angela had lent him. This engine didn't break by accident. It was deliberately sabotaged. The first image projected onto the wall showed components damaged with surgical precision. "Look here." 3 sensors were intentionally broken to simulate natural failure. The pattern is too specific to be a coincidence. A nervous murmur ran through the crowd. Rebecca tried to interrupt. "This is ridiculous. You're making excuses for your incompetence." "Interesting that you mention incompetence," interrupted Angela, approaching with a thick folder. Dr. Angela Morrison, professor of mechanical engineering and former FBI expert on industrial sabotage. "I have analyzed the evidence collected by Mr. Jackson and can confirm this engine was sabotaged following a pattern I have identified in 8 previous cases at this company." The blood drained from Rebecca's face. What is going on here?" David continued projecting images. Each case of sabotage occurred on projects led by African-American engineers or women. When the projects failed, these professionals were demoted or fired. Guess who always took over the projects after that? Samuel Torres emerged from the crowd carrying documents. 40 years working at this company has given me access to a lot of information. Rebecca, you and your group have received promotions and bonuses totaling $1.2 million over the past 3 years, always after taking over a project that mysteriously failed. Rebecca was visibly shaking. "You can't prove anything. This is defamation." David smiled for the first time in 5 days. "I can. Jake, do you remember the video you made imitating me in a racist way? What you didn't know is that my daughter recorded everything and saved it before you could delete it." The projection changed to the cool video of Rebecca imitating racial stereotypes. Horror-stricken gasps echoed through the warehouse. Important clients began to leave, clearly uncomfortable. "And Rebecca," David continued, "do you remember all those cruel posts in the WhatsApp group? My daughter printed every single one, including your private messages discussing how to keep certain types of people in their place." The projection exploded into devastating screenshots, messages from Rebecca talking about cleaning the company of undesirable elements and using creative methods to eliminate the competition from diversity. Thomas Crawford, the company's director, had arrived silently and watched with a look of growing horror. "Rebecca, in my office. Now." "Wait," said David. "I'm not finished yet." He turned to the engine and started it. The smooth, perfect roar of the machine filled the warehouse. It wasn't just working, it worked better than the original. This engine hasn't just been repaired, it's been optimized. I've increased its efficiency by 15% using techniques that anyone with real experience, not just a degree, knows. Rebecca collapsed into a chair, her red blazer now looking like a flag of surrender. Tears of anger and humiliation streamed down her face. "David," stammered Jake, "we didn't know. It was just a joke." "A joke?" David stared at him coldly. "You tried to destroy my reputation, humiliate my daughter at school, and perpetuate a system that prevents talented people from growing because of the color of their skin. That's not a joke. It's a crime." Angela approached the microphone. "The complete documentation of this investigation has already been sent to the Department of Justice, the State Board of Engineers, and the press. Rebecca Williams and Jacob Silver will face criminal charges of sabotage and discrimination." The silence in the warehouse was deafening. Rebecca tried to stand up, but her legs gave way. "By the way," said David calmly, turning off the engine, "about that marriage proposal. Thank you, but I'm going to have to decline. I prefer partners who respect me as a human being." As Rebecca was escorted out by company security, completely broken and humiliated in front of everyone she had tried to impress, David stood firm beside the engine he had repaired, not only with his technical skills, but with something much more powerful: dignity, intelligence, and a sense of justice that no diploma could buy. Because sometimes when privileged people forget that competence has no color, they discover in the most brutal way possible that underestimating someone can be the most expensive mistake of their lives. A mistake that not only destroys careers but rewrites entire stories about who really deserves to be at the top. 6 months after what Precision Automotive employees came to call the Day of Truth, David Jackson sat in his new office overlooking downtown Detroit. The plaque on the door read, "David Jackson, Director of Technological Innovation, Precision Automotive." Thomas Crawford had made quick and definitive decisions after the events of that day. Rebecca Williams was fired for cause and faced 3 criminal charges for sabotage, racial discrimination, and conspiracy. Jake Silver was also fired and was working as a used car salesman, trying to pay off his legal debts. The irony, David thought, watching through the window, is that they were always afraid I would take their place. They never imagined I would create something much bigger. The company had offered David not only an executive position, but also full funding for his inclusive innovation department. His first project, a mentoring program that connected experienced mechanics with newly graduated engineers, was already being implemented in 5 states. Angela Morrison now worked as a specialist consultant for the company, investigating and correcting decades of institutionalized discriminatory practices. Her partnership with David had resulted in discoveries that benefited dozens of professionals who had been systematically disadvantaged. "Dad, did you see this?" Jasmine entered the office carrying her tablet. Now 19 and studying engineering at university on a full scholarship funded by the company, she had become a recognized digital activist. Rebecca tried to post on LinkedIn about overcoming personal challenges, but the comments, well, the internet has a memory. David smiled softly. Rebecca had tried to rebuild a professional image, but evidence of her racist behavior continued to circulate on social media. No reputable engineering firm wanted to associate its name with Hayes. Samuel Torres, now a senior consultant in David's department, walked in carrying reports. Sales of the new optimized engine have exceeded all projections. 3 competing companies have already made offers to license the technology. "And Jake?" David asked. He tried to sell confidential information from his previous company to a competitor. Samuel replied with a wry smile. He was caught in the same trap he used to set for others. Now he is facing federal charges of industrial espionage. That afternoon, David received an unexpected phone call. It was from the host of the local radio show where Rebecca had tried to humiliate him months earlier. "Mr. Jackson, we'd like to invite you to talk about your journey in your new automotive industry inclusion program. Many people want to hear your story directly from you." David accepted, not out of revenge, but because he knew his story could inspire others facing similar situations. During the live interview, the host asked, "How do you feel about Rebecca Williams now?" David paused thoughtfully. "I don't feel anger. I feel sorry for her. She wasted years of her life feeding prejudices instead of using her talent to build something meaningful. The real tragedy isn't what she did to me. It's what she did to herself. When he got home that night, Jasmine was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Dad, there's something I've always wanted to ask you. That day in the warehouse, when everyone was laughing at you, did you really know you were going to prove them all wrong?" David hugged his daughter. "Princess, your mother taught me something important before she died. She said that dignity isn't about never falling down. It's about how you get back up. And sometimes letting people underestimate you is the biggest advantage you can have." At that moment, his cell phone vibrated with a notification. It was a Forbes article. David Jackson, from neighborhood mechanic to automotive industry revolutionary. How one man turned prejudice into progress. 6 months ago, Rebecca Williams had tried to publicly humiliate him for believing that some people need to know their place. Today, David Jackson was redefining exactly what that place was for talented people in the industry, regardless of their color or background. Rebecca had lost her career, her reputation, and her credibility. Jake was facing criminal charges. But David had built something that would last for generations. A legacy of fairness, inclusion, and excellence that proved that the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you, but building something so extraordinary that it renders all the smallness they try to impose on you irrelevant. Because sometimes when privileged people forget that greatness has no color or social class, they discover that underestimating someone can be the catalyst that transforms a victim into a leader, a moment of humiliation into a revolution, and an end into an even more powerful beginning. If you also believe that true justice comes through building, not destruction, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that dignity always wins over arrogance, and talent always finds its way to the top, no matter how many obstacles are put in its path.